Hi everyone, Queeveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. We are looking ahead here to the 20th of August in order to catch an occultation. Anything that is occult is something that is hidden. When people talk about occult magic or occult texts, it really means something that's hidden. It's secret knowledge, it's hidden away. And an occultation is where something hides something else in space. In this case, it's an occultation of Saturn by the moon. So the moon here will move in front of Saturn, blocking it from our view. This is very, very similar to an eclipse. I cannot stress how similar to an eclipse this is. It is similar to an eclipse because of the way in which it happens. And we're zooming in here, 3 o'clock in the morning on the moon and Saturn. Saturn is still visible there next to the moon, so we'll move forward just a little bit more. There we go. By 3:30, Saturn has disappeared behind the moon. And then popping out the other side, just about there at 4. So we have a good half an hour here where the moon is completely blocking out Saturn. The moon goes around the Earth's equator and Saturn goes around the sun's equator. Saturn follows the ecliptic, whereas the moon follows our equator. Those two lines don't match up perfectly because of the Earth's tilt. The circle that the moon makes around the Earth crosses the circle that the planets make around the sun. So the line that the moon traces around the Earth, it crosses the line that the planets and the sun make across the sky. And it does that twice every month. The moon will ascend from below to above the ecliptic once a month, and then it will descend from above to below the ecliptic once a month as well. These will happen on roughly opposite sides. So this is why we often get lunar eclipses and solar eclipses in tandem. If the moon is directly behind us when it is full, then there is a good chance it will cross directly in front of us again when it is new. Slight differences, and the fact that the moon goes around the Earth every 29.5 days, not every 30, that means that it's not going to be perfect. And of course, just because you see a lunar eclipse does not mean you will see its associated solar eclipse. That's not necessarily guaranteed. The same thing is happening here, where the moon is crossing the ecliptic where Saturn happens to be at the moment. The moon just happens to be crossing the ecliptic when it's not full, and when it's not full at exactly the right place to block out our occult Saturn. Of course, Saturn and all of the planets are moving as well. So, of course, we're orbiting the sun isn't really moving. But this means that occultations, they are rare, they're occasional. I think something nice is just about visible with this occultation, although it is definitely quite difficult to catch. So we can see here that because the moon isn't full, we have a little portion of the moon here in shadow. And Titan is going to disappear when it's behind the moon, or it will reappear from behind the moon here. Here on the 20th, Titan will disappear behind the moon. We can see Titan illuminating the edge of the moon there. So Titan will appear from behind the moon, but because part of the moon is in shadow, it will almost look like there's a little bit of a delay, where there is this empty space and Titan won't be visible until it pops out from behind that empty space. Of course, it's not empty space, it is the moon. The opposite thing can happen with other occultations. For example, if the half moon occults something, because half of the moon is going to appear dark, it's going to look like the object, whatever it is, simply vanishes. But of course, it is going behind just a part of the moon that we can't clearly see. So we can see that is Tethys, another of Saturn's moons. We can see Saturn there just starting, but just barely about to start hitting the moon as we come up to past, and we can see it there just vanishing, just getting blocked out by the moon. So this is an occultation. Occultations, just like eclipses, aren't always visible from every part of the world. Because this only lasts for half an hour, we Ireland. But for anyone who the moon isn't up for and won't be up a half an hour either side of this, they're not going to see it. Now, we're also quite high on the planet, so there's a good chance we're not seeing over the moon to see Saturn. Saturn is getting blocked out, but there's a good chance that we're quite close. The Saturn does seem to be crossing across the top of the moon, kind of making a tangent across the top of the moon here. So there is a good chance that this would last longer if we were closer to the equator. And there is also I hit the wrong button. There is also a good chance that we'd be able to see this for longer if we were just slightly further to the west than we are here in Ireland. If we were seeing the moon over south rather than seeing it falling over towards the southwest, it would at least put it higher in the sky and easier for us to observe. So here we go. I'm going to bring us a little bit closer to the equator and a little bit further to the west. So here we go. We need to go west, so that's this way. And we need to go reasonably close to the equator. So somewhere around here-ish, not far off. Well, I presume the Azores are up around here somewhere, but they are tough to see on a map such as this. Okay, here we are. There's the moon and Saturn, certainly a lot closer to the middle of the sky when the occultation is happening, or at least it seems like the occultation is happening. So let's zoom in here. Okay, Saturn is, just on the other side of the moon here. If we start moving backwards, it still appears to be making a tangent, but it is a much, the tangent is much, much closer to the center of the moon rather than being closer to the top. So we can see it starting. We will zoom in nice and close so we can see exactly when it starts, and then we'll move forward to see exactly when it ends. So here we go. And yes, the atmosphere is turned on. There are a couple of things that can make things appear to start earlier or later. So just to make sure that we are seeing this as you would really see it, the atmosphere, of course, needs to be turned on, unless you are an astronaut. If any astronauts watch my YouTube channel, that would be great. So here we are just starting at nearly 22. Unless you have a very powerful telescope, they will pretty much appear like they're touching here. And of course, with the bright light of the moon, you may need something to block out some light of the moon if you want to see Saturn like this. It may look a little bit washed out otherwise. So we can see here starting at 20 to 12 and continuing all the way through. So it's already been 10 minutes, coming up to, we can go a little bit faster, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, so already lasting as long as it lasted from our perspective here in Ireland. We'll keep pushing, now coming up to 40 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes. There we go, 50 minutes behind the moon. Will we get an hour behind the moon? We will. So Saturn there occulted for a full hour, almost an hour and 5 minutes behind the moon if you are right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. We're seeing the moon just come out there, seeing Saturn just come out there, and Saturn fully out from behind the moon. If we're counting the rings, it's fully out from behind the moon after an hour and 5 minutes, 20 to 1. Quarter to 1, it comes out, 20 to 12, it goes behind. So definitely getting to see that occultation for longer and higher in the sky, so easier to observe with a telescope if you are very, very close to the equator and in the middle of the Atlantic. I'm sure most of you won't be. People do tend to live in cities and on dry land. There's not much of either in the middle of the Atlantic. But I do think if you are living in the Azores, that should be one of the best locations to see this occultation. I wonder if the Azores will come up. I'm not sure. They're certainly not being marked as the Azores. They're just being marked as Southern Europe. And of course, the Azores being related to the Canaries. Canaries pretty close. So of course being connected to Spain. So the Canaries would be a great place to look for them as well. Of course, there isn't really any land right there smack dab in the middle, although along the coast of Brazil there should be a pretty good place, and even up towards Suriname and French Guiana. These should all be good places to see this occultation. So occultations, they're certainly not as big as and as impressive as a solar eclipse. Watching the entire sky turn dark in the middle of the day is an incredible thing to catch. However, they are pretty much of equal rarity, even though occultations as a whole happen more often, because it could be Saturn, it could be Jupiter, it could be Mars. There's lots of things that could be occulted. Of course, stars can be occulted by the moon as well. That happens regularly. But specifically an occultation of Saturn, that isn't likely to happen again for a while. They are quite rare, especially for any given location on the Earth. There are plenty of locations around the world, most of North America, most of Southeast Asia and South Asia, that won't be able to see this. If you're on the wrong side of the planet to catch this event, which at most will last just about an hour. Moving past the occultation now, Saturn will definitely be out the other side of the moon by the time the sun rises. But even here, a little before the sunrise, we can see Saturn there, distinctly separate from the moon in the sky. I'll put it in the center, just like that, distinctly separate from the moon in the sky. Mars and Jupiter getting very close together, and of course they will have had their conjunction just a little bit earlier in the month, but they are only having a conjunction. If we take a close look at Mars and Jupiter here, just to finish up, we will see that although they get very, very close together in the sky, they don't actually block each other out. That doesn't happen, at least for us here in Ireland. Maybe from other locations, but I do not think so. So that is the occultation of Saturn that is coming up on the 20th. I hope you get a chance to see it, even if it does mean you have to get up very early. For those of us here in Ireland, if I have anybody watching this from Gran Canaria, you'll be able to see this happening for closer to an hour rather than half an hour. But regardless of whether or not you get to see it in real life, I hope you enjoyed getting to see it here in simulation. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it so that I know you liked it. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which will help me produce more videos and make sure you're notified when I do. You can also take a look at my website, queebeanscontent.ie, if you'd like to read some of this information. And with all of that, I'll hope you come back to see the next video.